My name is Wylie Rogers. I'm a lifelong goaltender. I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska. I moved away at the age of 16 to play hockey in Michigan. Ended up returning back to my hometown to play 4 years of college at the University of Alaska Fairbanks before turning pro and having a 4.5 year of pro career in North America and over in Europe. In 2012, I was injured sliding into the post over in Europe. I tried to play one more year and realized it was time to probably go back to school and further my education. So I returned to Fairbanks as the volunteer goalie coach and started the MBA program, where accidentally I invented what I do full-time now, the Wylie post. So maybe if I could just get the lights for a quick second. I'll show about 30 seconds of, this is an old video of what, just so everyone's on the same page of what a peg does for a hockey net and how it anchors. There you go. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead and set this side in too. There you go. Right over the top of the
I've seen those on Facebook.
into the ice, just to give an overview of what pegs actually do and where the problem arises. That's perfect, thank you. So I guess to first explain how they're anchored today. This is a full steel slug peg. This has been unchanged since the beginning of the game of hockey, and it's exactly how the nets are anchored everywhere in any practice rink that you go to. Over at the Sullivan in practice, this is what they use. It's standard. It sits on top of every net. And all it does is it sets into the ice, and this little spike anchors the net. Now, a long time ago, this wasn't an issue for goalies. The nets never came off because goalies were stand-up. They didn't use the post as anchors to move around the goal mouth area. As the game has evolved and the need is evolved for goalies to move quicker around the net, this post, or this peg, became very inefficient. It actually started back in 1985 when a need for a new way to anchor the hockey nets came out. In 1985, Marsh peg was invented, and in 1991 it was adopted into the NHL. Now this peg system is the industry standard today. As you can see, it's just a long cylinder rubber peg, and the ice, it's set in 4 inches into the ice surface, meaning they have to drill into the concrete to actually set this peg in, and then the rest of the 6 inches of the peg is up inside the net. So for an actual game in the NHL, NCAA, Olympics, International Ice Hockey Federation, this is how the nets are anchored to the ice. This only happens in competition. So as you can imagine, being a goalie that's used to these pegs, and now in games, these pegs, it's going to secure the net much easier. So now goalies can push post to post and move around the net without the net becoming dislodged. As practice rolls around, no one's out drilling for these pegs. It takes about a half hour to drill the ice out and down into the concrete, when this is all they really put on top of the ice. So this is where the problem is created and why the Wylie post solves this problem. This peg also, my peg not only replaces this, but turns every net into as if the Marsh peg is anchored. So now with the Wylie post, you get the stability of the Marsh peg with the easy installation, no drilling. You just set the peg in, and the net has the same stability as what would be the rubber peg system, the industry standard. There's other features of my product. This is a line of prototypes that I'll kind of go through at the very end. But what we have is, what we've learned over time is a dual spike system with a screwable urethane top, which allows the net to break free on player impact. If you can imagine, when a player runs into this slug into the net, it just kind of skids along the ice. The net doesn't fully break away. When a player runs into the net with the Wylie post, the net fully breaks off the urethane and away in a safe manner. How I was injured in Europe was a second wave of players ran into me. So the nets there are anchored with the nail system, which is just a nail that's welded in the bottom of the post. So the net didn't fully break away from the net, from the goal mouth area, so the next guy running through was the one that that injured me and hit the post. The Wylie post it has kind of come a long way through the development process. I'll catch everyone up on where we are now. This was my original prototype. I took this and this to an actual welder and I said, can you make this work? Can you give me a working prototype? That's unfortunately in Seattle with one of my team members, so I don't have that one to display. But after making a peg that worked and was anchored, we tried to make it safer. So we started off with urethanes that mimicked the marsh peg. We also found that because this is anchored at the ice surface and this is anchored underneath the ice, they act completely differently. So we had to certainly try and play with different ideas. This is a silicone bait. We decided that we needed to make it smaller, fatter, shorter, easier to break away from the post. And one of my lead engineers came up with a zinc coating that allows the peg to melt into the ice. Now this hasn't ever been used in the game of hockey, and we're trying to figure out a way to anchor these pegs the best we possibly could. We tried a bunch of different zinc coatings, a bunch of different spikes. We're still continually playing with the spike design, but we have something now that is extremely close to our final. We're selling it. My patent was filed in February. I solidified my manufacturers in July. Pre-sales became available in November. We launched the product in December. And we've completed our first half of production. We've secured a wholesaler, and we've changed the design. You can tell spike is just barely changed to make it more universal product on every sheet of ice. And we've kicked off the second half of production with our newest prototype, constantly evolving the product, trying to make it better, break the learning curve. It's obviously a little bit of a learning curve when you see this, and then all of a sudden you see this. Not maybe for goalies, but for referees. I'm looking for videographers, bookkeepers, and as always, funders. So, I'd like to have any questions answered.
How many units have you sold?
About 100 sets right now.
And what's the capacity of
Uh,
manufacturing?
The capacity for them to manufacture the product. My urethanes, they can pump out close to 50 a week right now with the molds that we have made. If we feel like we need to get larger quantities, it's pretty easy to replicate those and tool those molds that are needed to make the urethanes. The base plates are fairly simple to make, so roughly 50 sets a week.
And where are they being sold?
We're manufactured out of Kalamazoo, but they're sold online. Sales right now are the main way we get out there. I go to Michigan and travel around and demo and sell them to the NCAA, which is kind of my main market right now, just implementing it at a higher level so that we have that trickle-down effect. They are being used in the NHL with a couple different teams, and we expect that to grow pretty quick here.
You said they are being used in the NHL?
In practice, yeah. Believe it or not, these aren't drilled for every NHL team in practice. You'd think they are, being the highest level of hockey around, but not all rinks still drill, so a lot of NHL goalies are still practicing on these, and there's an extreme need to practice like they're going to play in a game. So, for example, Pittsburgh drills for theirs every practice, but when they go on the road, they need something because they have the old pegs still. So that's where they're being used for Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Is it something that could go into game time application, or just strictly practice, or just kind of trying to?
Yeah, well, this is the industry standard right now. So this is you can only install the marsh peg in arenas that have a concrete subfloor where they know where their freon lines are. Because if you're drilling 4 inches down and your lines you not have a detailed map, and you drill into a line, there's obviously a lot of damage that's going into that. So a lot of these arenas for game use, they have no other option. So for this to be implemented at the levels of, last night it was in Eagle River for the high school hockey game. We're trying to obviously spread the word, and the more people that use it, the more we refine it so that it works perfectly every time, the more it'll be accepted and used it in game. The NHL, absolutely not. Like, this is the industry standard. They have the capability, but like I said, for practice, they don't. Right?
Have you experimented with ballistic post settings?
I have not at all.
Just using those 22s, like the hammers that just right in the concrete. I don't know if that would shatter the ice too much, or if it would just be perfect with like the, yeah,
Yeah. Well, do they make a hole this big?
big enough bullet, right?
I guess. So what this actually sets in is they drill into the concrete subfloor and they insert a metal ring, a metal coupling that this slides into. That way, if you see them and they're blowtorching the ice or they're drilling the ice, it doesn't damage anything around it. It's supposed to just be inside that coupling, and sometimes they turkey base the water out. But like I said, it's a long process for them to do, and for an arena manager to staff to upkeep that day in, day out is very time consuming, very expensive. And when all they really have to do is throw a peg on top of the net for the next team that goes out, it's not really plausible that they would spend that time or money. I know that the Patty Center up in Fairbanks drilled into their lines, and it was about a $15,000 fix on top of the install price.
Are you selling to arenas or goalies? What's the
Right,
total
so
market look like?
I sell, it's easy for me, being a retired hockey player and coach, that I go to all these NCAA coaches that I know and players that I know and say, hey, this is now ready for purchase. Let me demo it on ice with you. It's very easy for me to go to the rink and demo it on the ice and have the team go, wow, yeah, absolutely, we have to have this. My wholesalers, Becker Arena Products, they're going to attack the market of arenas and Zambonis. It's harder for me to go to a Zamboni driver and tell them why they need this product and why they need to make the investment when this is a $200 product and this is a $40 product. So I'm letting my wholesalers kind of tackle that end of the market where they're professionals in it. But right now, I'm the hockey and the team guy.
What is your cost versus your margin?
My margins are in the 50s right now. My cost is only going to go down. Certainly because my original RFQ was based on tooling the molds to create the urethanes to inject the rubber top. We also had it worked in that they're going to be hot dip galvanized. That's not the case. We plate them with a zinc and nickel plating now. Instead of two different size spikes, we're switching over to the exact same spike, which will only make manufacturing costs go down, tooling the same parts. So we expect that margin to only grow here in the next 6 months, certainly, when we put our next order in.
Are there any videos that you have shown to where people, at least online, they can see the comparison of the older style, how it's unsafe versus that, to where they can see if somebody slides into this, they could get injured, whereas that would be a safer version?
Right, we don't have any actual really good video demonstration. That's certainly something that's up and coming now that we have to have, because I can only be in one place so many times. I really need something that can explain the entire product a lot quicker, a lot more seamlessly than I can when I'm talking to people. So I want them to see it and go, wow, we have to have that. Just like the same reaction they get when I put it in and the goalie uses it, and they go, I can't go back to the old pegs. So the idea is to just eradicate this product and replace the Wylie post on top of every net across. And video, obviously, instruction is a key component to making that reality. Yeah.
So you mentioned you have team members, how big is your team and what are the functions right now? Do you see the need for growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have, the design is very close to being worked out. I have a tester in Canada that's been tested as a goalie coach. He travels to different areas, different rinks, about 7 a week, and uses them with different size goalies, different age goalies. And he's kind of my main data collector. He's very good at, like I said, I'm only at Subway and Sully sometimes. And Wells Fargo, we can't even install the pegs because of the inner diameter of the post, so I can't even use them there until they get new nets. So having him as a tester, and then of course my friends that are my good close friend that's playing in the NHL, he's going to be a good outlet for kind of doing that. But I have an engineer here in town that's been with me since day one, Kai Holland, and Kai's been the lead force on the design process. And now, eventually, he said, "Hey, now that we got what we need, we're to market. I don't know how much more I can be involved, but as you know, we keep everyone as close as we can and working on this. So the team isn't that large. I have a very good relationship with manufacturers. I visit them every other month in Michigan, and they're a huge part of the success. And now adding Becker Arena products is another aspect that is huge. So as far as individuals, I haven't really created a CFO. I'm about the only
So
no
that's
employees.
the need that you have, the skill set.
Exactly,
that you need.
yeah. Looking certainly for a numbers person, someone that's infected or can get infected with the Wylie Coast bug is important, very important.
How big is your market? How many rings out there are there that have potential?
It's a very hard question to answer. As I was talking before, if you look at a census of how many arenas there are, there's 10,000 arenas in North America. Now, arenas defined loosely, being that the Bemboki Ice Arena has 2 ice sheets, the Sullivan has 1, they're both counted as an arena. Places all over, as far as Minnesota, have 8 ice sheets per arena, so it doesn't count. It's hard to tell what that actually is. And then for each ice sheet, there's 2 nets, so you need 2 sets of pegs, but you also need backups, because in the summer when they have camps, usually 4 nets on the ice is a standard. So it's hard to really evaluate exactly what the demand is, not to mention individual goalie sales, so that anyone can put these in their bag and go to any rink and use them and train like they're going to be playing. So it's very hard to do a thorough market analysis on what the need or what the demand or what the potential could be to fill every arena. Yeah.
You mentioned that the inner diameter of the posts are too small for one of the arenas here. Is that something you guys have in line for manufacturing, just a smaller kind of cap for the top, or is it not going to work?
Very rare. It's the first time we've seen it as an issue. Usually what happens is when this post is installed and the net's banging on top of it to set it into the ice further to try and get a better grip, when really you're not going to get much more of the half inch that's here. The nets kind of flange out. You can imagine banging metal, so we tell people to clean the inside of their nets out with a little file, but the problem with the Wells Fargo is that the net's been so old that they've welded pipes on the inside of it and then refined their peg to be a custom peg to fit that little hole, so it's very rare.
There's more standard size to almost all the nets until.
Yeah,
they
there's,
take it up there.
the nets are pretty standard. Even the older ones, there's not a big difference. It's only if you've kind of customized your own net, and we're hoping that when you buy a new net, you get a set of the Wylie post with it to kind of give you the latest, most modified model of
So yeah, you don't really need to have multiple sizes.
No. We've juggled the idea of the Wylie Post Junior, which I'm sure will eventually make, which is safe for all youth kids, but it's still in idea phase, aside from prototype. Yeah.
How many net manufacturers are there, and would it make sense to reach the market through them?
Yeah, instead of going to the net manufacturers, going to the arena wholesalers is kind of skipping that step, because if a net manufacturer is making their product, they're not usually selling the pegs with the net. That's a completely different entity that's selling those. So I kind of skipped that and went straight to the people that they buy from, that arenas buy from is the wholesaler. So they stock all of the nets. They have that decision on what they're selling their net for and what's going out with it. I think the peg, if you're making nets or making pegs, you're making them for a lot of different sports, right? So your variation is, my product would be limited to only the hockey side of that net making company. But I can't imagine there's more than 3 net making companies that I know, and they're constantly changing names. Franklin was a huge player 5-10 years ago, and I think they've been bought out. Everyone's pretty much being bought out by the bigger hockey brands now. Yeah, either one. You were last.
Oh, thank you. I'm just curious, so based on the sales that you've had so far and the marketing push that you've done, is there any way that you're going to be able to project your sales growth in the next quarter? You know, do you kind of can you figure in the next 3 months what you're going to be able to sell? And can you project that at this point?
I don't think that at this point we'll be able to do that. There's a lot of underlayments that need to be kind of fixed as far as knowing you know, how I feel like if we update everything online, on our online side of it, and now that people are starting to hear about it, they want to see that, that place to buy. I've had a really hard time with GoDaddy keeping everything together as far as the online store from the website, and it's been a bit of a nightmare with them on their end. So I think if we integrate everything into a new platform that looks seamless and nice, and people will have a little more faith in the product and then we can update that and kind of create the buzz. And the other side of that is projecting is very difficult when you're in season right now, because you can imagine as soon as the hockey season's over in summer, we don't really know what to expect, because all of these goalies are going to camps and they're being used by these big name hockey camps for goalies. So we have mass concentration using the Wylie post, and then we say, hey, these are for sale, anyone can have these. We really don't know the potential of what that could be or what to expect, but it's continually increasing, and as we refine the product and get better results and more people talk, it's only kind of, we can't really control how fast it spreads at this point.
How quick is your manufacturing cycle? So how quickly, if you get an unsuspected large order, how quickly can you have these produced?
Well, we don't expect any large orders unless it comes from the wholesaler.
Sure.
Not a lot of places are buying something that we can't. We're stocked in inventory right now. It's going to take about 2.5 weeks to have this next set of 125 made, but that's only because we stopped production, made a few adjustments, prototyped it while we still had the inventory in the first set, and now that we're getting the overwhelming, like, yeah, this is clearly more of a universal, it's working better everywhere, then I was able to kind of cut production and then move to the changing the spike design slightly. Yeah.
How much money are you looking to raise, and do you have a use of funds plan?
Yeah, my wife and I were actually talking about this. If we had that number, I'm looking for about $75,000, and what that would give us is basically the freedom to put a lot of it into the marketing side. We really want to flood the market with these. I'm already giving a lot of these away as demos or bill me laters. You try them, you love them, I'll bill you for them. I really want to be able to go out and hammer this name and make sure everyone knows about it at the highest levels of the game. I want to be able to showcase this product.
So do you have a marketing plan with hard costs attached to?
I don't that I could actually get into detail with at this point. I know what it's costing us as far as what our overhead is and what these trips are, but to be honest, a lot of the R&D's kind of done, and we're keeping a pretty regular cash flow just from what we are bringing in and trying to keep it that way. We've invested our own money, and I do have one other investor in this, and was basically paying for that first run of production that we couldn't work out, but everything from patents to travel to websites, the standard overhead's been pretty. If you'd like to sit down and discuss a detailed marketing plan, I'd certainly.
I'm sure there are people.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to sit down and talk about it, but we don't have a lot of overhead at this point. But we also need to be a household name very quickly. We have the patent, so there is another peg that's a competition of ours, but it's basically just for training purposes. You can imagine this being a steel slug with 2 new spikes. It's basically this version with 2 spikes on the bottom. Don't believe it impacts our patent. It only helps our product when people say they're using it. So then we say, we'll send you one and you can test the safety differences between the two. And they don't recommend theirs for gameplay. And that was the idea, was to make this safe.
Do you know what the pricing is?
The pricing's $125 a set, and then $165 for an adjustable spike set. So they have 2 different variations of the product, but from everyone that we've used and people that have used both, there's no comparison in how it functions, besides the fact that the Wylie post allows for it to be used while the whole team's on the ice, not just when the goalie and 2 shooters are doing drills.
How often will a rink replace these? If you sell it to them, will they just buy it once forever, or is it something they'll buy 2-3 times a year? Or?
When they're buying these ones, we're finding that some rinks are buying it 3 or 4 times a year. And that's because as soon as this little tiny nub wears down to a ground, it obviously doesn't anchor anywhere near. A lot of rinks try sharpen it with their own, file it down, trying to renew or reuse this product. With my pegs, they don't actually slam the nets on top of them. As you can see in the video, they just set them in the ice and they melt in. The net's a conductor of heat, so if these are at room temperature or ambient air temperature and they set into the ice, they melt in, and then the net on top of it, the energy is transferred down. Some rinks get too warm, and we've thought about putting some sort of barrier, breaking that contact of the nets, but we haven't found it being an issue yet, so that these melt, the spikes never wear out. If the urethane is ever torn or ripped from a skate, it simply unscrews. I guarantee the urethane's for a year. We've had it tested for 6 months. We haven't seen any wear and tear, any sign of maybe they may wear or tear. But then I only sell these for $30 for a new set of two. So you're really just buying the product, maybe a replacement top after 4 or 5 years. The biggest concern with the arenas is that the goalie uses them and steals them. So a lot of my earlier prototypes that were extremely expensive to build, these ones are adhered on. They're not screw off a different type of urethane. A lot of them got stolen. We got a lot of calls after the first week saying, "Hey, can we get another set of those? We had them, and we just didn't know." You know, so it's obviously something that my wholesalers are very concerned about, right? And they build boards and they build all sorts of custom things for arenas, so they're trying to, well, how can we incorporate them into our boards? How can we keep a little lockbox so that these get thrown into? We hope they never have to buy them again. Is that reality? Probably not. But as far as the product being renewable, or they should never have to buy another bottom plate, maybe a urethane. Yeah.
Do you have vision beyond this product to something else?
I hope not. I think that there's a lot of room for growth in this initial line of product. I think that the Wylie Post Junior, after it's accepted, you know, globally, then we can start working on the junior set. I have a few more ideas to make this even better, kind of like the iPhone. After you have it and you need it, and then they release a better one, you kind of need it, even though the other one still works. It's just not as good because that new one's there. And we have some ideas to kind of diversify on this product line, but not right now. Yeah.
Since you sold 100 sets, how long did it take you to sell that many?
Pre-sales started in November, and we launched in December, so a couple months. There's been a lot of different rhyme or reasons of who's buying them, but I think that getting these few underlying things ironed out with the business itself and getting big names using it, people tweeting about it, you know, high-level boys, I think the sales are only going to increase. Obviously, that's what most people say, right? Yeah.
Of those, 100 plus sales, how many of those were just cold sales? You had no contact with them, you didn't personally, shake somebody's hand,
Yeah.
give them a trial set?
Probably about 15 to 20 of those sets are people that I had no idea who they were. That's a good question though, because a lot of that is people have known about. We debuted this in April with these pegs, which I thought we were going to sell, and then realized that there's a lot longer process to this. But those coaches and those teams and organizations that kind of follow the progress and were asking if it's ready, those were obviously my initial pre-sales. And then and I get a lot of hey, I just heard about this, can we try it? And sometimes it's yeah, but I think it's more and more of those random questions of, can you use this? Can we use this in a high school game? Is this certified to use here? And there's no certification on it yet, but it's, we need to get people to accept it for sure. Yeah.
Does the wholesaler have access to the demos and things like that, where he's able to, give the arenas a try before you buy, or anything, incentives like that to help with them? Or?
Yeah, last month when I met with them, I dropped off 8 sets, so they've had the.
Just kind of rotating.
Yeah, they have a office in Colorado and also on the East Coast in Boston, so they sent them out to their guys, and they're conducting a little bit of market research and seeing what their need is for them, and then putting an order in with us to stock and ship through them. So they're also helping kind of solidify a price point that we're playing with.
How did you come about your price point? Just kind of looking at the market and seeing what your cost was? Or
Yeah, well, actually, I looked at, when we were launching, I looked at the competition of the anchor peg and I've continually seen their price drop quite a bit. We dropped our initial price off the hop, but I think it's more of it's something that we need everyone to feel comfortable with. You know, there's a lot of people that buy, I mean, a stick, $230, $240 now just for one player stick. So a kid might be, a parent might be, you know, a lot, feel comfortable with a $200 set of pegs, but an arena Zamboni driver may not. So we need to find that happy medium where everyone kind of feels like, yeah, that's a good price, I'll pay that.
Are you targeting both indoor and outdoor rinks or just mostly indoor?
I'm personally not targeting any rinks really, that I'm trying to. I get a lot of questions from them, but I think that the outdoor market is not kind of where our main focus is at all. I think getting people to use them outdoors and collect information would be great, but not a lot of training or games going on, more of a lot of recreational things going on outdoors.
Would it work out outdoor if it's too cold, but still,
Yeah. So really cold rinks, there's a lot of indoor rinks I've been in lately that are outdoor feel, like very, like see your breath, ice in the water bottle on top of the net, extremely cold. And what we're finding at those rinks already are putting these pegs in warm water. So when they put them out there, they freeze. So using the Wylie post, let's try it in warm water. Gives that extra melting effect every time. Those rinks are usually not easily controlled with the temperature. The rink out in Eagle River just put a new CO2 system in. They can easily control via smartphone exactly the temperature down to the degree of what the ice is. So as the stands fill up, more people come in, you know, to watch a game. And the atmosphere heats up, they can keep their ice at a constant level or even colder than what they need. So if the rink's really cold, we're finding ways around it so that it works every time.
You know, as we grow your sales and grow the interest in the Wylie Post, are people just going to be ordering online through you, through this one wholesaler, or will you go to local sports shops and do like consignment or something like that?
Yeah, I've just talked personally with a couple different retail stores in the Michigan area being one of them, but to be honest, not a lot of people are going into these retail stores to buy hockey stuff anymore. It's all the main online competition of Goalie Monkey, Hockey World, you know, these online as the world we live in, right? So a lot of times the brick and mortars aren't really the idea. There's some arenas that have pro shops in them that I'd like to see what they do, you know, because you know, $200 to spend at a pro shop is not a big deal when you just traveled how many miles and your kid's there and all of a sudden, you know, he forgot his pegs or something and he tells his dad, I can't play without these pegs or practice with them. There might be a market there, but sticking to online, I think, is probably where we'll be able to really get the word out.
Your order function, it's available on your website right now, so we can just go online and order?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's all, I get the order, I see what it's for. Either I will, or my manufacturers will go and enter it on the spreadsheet, but I send them regardless. I send them the invoice. They pull a box. They're all numbered. Every peg is numbered with a serial stamp in it, so we know exactly what set number, who got what, and they drop ship from their location. Yeah, so I don't really see the actual product go out, but I have full track of where it is and who has it. Just a few more steps than I'd like through the GoDaddy platform, so I think simplifying that would save everyone a little bit of time and hassle.
Any more questions? I have one more. Okay, well, I'll ask you one.
Sure.
What can we as an entrepreneurship community do for you?
Spread the word. Spread the word. That's the biggest part. And I mean, it's not by mistake. Everyone that I've met along the way in this process, everyone's had some sort of impact on or insight that's helped in some sort of way. So feel free to shoot me an email, thewyliepost@gmail.com. I have a few cards left, but I'm just interested to see how the community can help out, like how other people can see, or if they have any ideas, or a way to spend your marketing money, or a marketing plan. You know, there's a lot of things that I mean, this is my first time running something like this. I had my own hockey school, so that was very easy. This is something that, you know, bookkeeping, accounting, it's not my strong suit. I'm managing, I did that for a reason, and not the finance side, so, I'm just looking for general help, for sure, and interest. Thank you.